Noel is an edgy young man who wants to become the world's strongest seeker, but he gets stuck with the weakest support class possible, a talker. In this world, there are phenomena called abyss that are connected to the depths of hell, and on this godforsaken day, matchmaking was busted so Noel's village got attacked by level 12 demons. Noel's grandfather is the only one in the village who has the skills to put up a fight against the demons, so he grabs his axe and tells Noel to stay hidden while he holds off the demons until help arrives. However, Noel knows there's no way help is coming for them in a situation like this, and fighting all those demons alone is a death sentence. He doesn't believe his grandpa can make it back alive from something like that, but his grandpa assures him that he can handle it. After all, he has defeated a level 13 demon before, and people don't call him over death for nothing. After that, he went out to face the demons, and while he may have put up a good fight and taken out a bunch of demons, Grandpa still got cooked so bad that his legs are in a different time zone. Noel rushes to his side, and Grandpa apologizes for not being strong enough to survive like he promised, but he had no choice if he wanted to protect the village. This is the fate all Seekers are doomed to because of the life of combat they've dedicated themselves to. Grandpa asks if Noel is going to follow his footsteps even after witnessing the dangers of the job, and with tears in his eyes, Noel declares that he will become the most powerful Seeker in the world, and Noel promises to become the world's strongest Seeker to carry on his grandpa's legacy. We then cut to present day when Noel has fulfilled his promise and became a Seeker to follow in his grandpa's footsteps. And although he's giving his teammates orders, he is far from the strongest on the team since he possesses the weakest support class, the Talker. The monsters Noel's team has been fighting are called lesser vampires, and they can't use magic, but they are troublesome to deal with since the vampire queen can reproduce in a short amount of time and give rise to a new army. Noel warns his party members not to let their guard down, because the lesser vampires are still insanely strong and they can continue fighting even when severely injured, so each one needs to be double tapped. The party continues through the dungeon, and Walter asks Noel if they can just ignore all the lesser vampires and head straight for the queen so they can complete the mission quickly. However, Noel tells him that that is a dumb idea since they would end up being surrounded by lesser vampires while they fight the queen. This mission is already difficult enough for a C-rank party like them to handle, so recklessly charging forward would surely get them killed. Walter gets the message, but he sarcastically says he is only listening to Noel because he is the important talker of the party. As a talker, Noel is able to enhance his party members with buff words, but his personal strength is far below average and it really frustrates him. So Noel turns around and is about to roast the self-confidence out of Walter. However, before he can say anything, he notices a lesser vampire camping on the ceiling, and it's definitely planning something, so he orders his team to take cover. Just then, the vampire releases a poisonous cloud, and Noel is caught right in the middle of it. The others see that Noel is in danger, so they want to rush over and save him. But before they can act, they get attacked by the vampire and Tanya gets knocked down. Walter and Lloyd try to stop the demon, but without Noel's buffs, they are much weaker than they were before, so Walter pleads with Noel to snap out of it and give them some orders. Noel hears this, and he has a flashback to the day his grandpa died, so he swears to himself that he won't let anyone else die and pulls out a gun to fire several shots at the demon while also drinking a health potion to recover from the poison. He may not have the same kind of strength his grandfather did, but that doesn't mean he is completely useless, and he plans to showcase just how important a talker can be. He activates his talker tactician skill, and now when he gives his teammates orders, their abilities are boosted by 25%. He then uses his battle voice skill and is able to increase the stamina and mana of his team. With Noel's help, the team is now able to hold their ground, but above them, Tanya spots 3 more demons, and she starts freaking out, so Noel uses one of his skills to get her to calm down. If everything goes according to plan from here, Noel predicts that the team should be able to finish the monsters off in 74 seconds, so he tells the others that he will handle the rest of the lesser vampires, so they should focus on taking down the queen and prepare to use their strongest attacks. As the lesser of vampires attack Noel, he uses a speech technique and yells at them to make them freeze in place, and once they are unable to move, he uses his magic gun to shoot an ice bullet and encase them in a block of ice. Unfortunately, one of the lesser vampires managed to dodge the attack, but he still has 1 bullet left in the chamber, so he has the option of freezing the last lesser vampire to save himself. However, he decides to fire the bullet at the queen to distract it and provide an opening for his teammates instead. Thanks to this, Walter and Lloyd are able to hit the queen with their ultimate moves and take it down. But when Tanya turns to Noel to celebrate their victory, she is horrified as she sees him getting stabbed by the lesser vampire. Fortunately, it turns out that Noel wasn't really stabbed, as he perfectly calculated things to make sure he would survive. He knew that once the queen was defeated, all the lesser vampires would naturally stop moving, and there was just enough time for him to avoid being killed. With this, the team has successfully cleared the dungeon and the surrounding abyss dissipates. Noel's teammates come over to check on him, and while they know he planned it all carefully, they still scold him for recklessly endangering his life like that. Noel thinks back to the day when he first learned that he was a talker, and he was crying his eyes out because he wanted to be a warrior like his grandpa. His grandpa told him not to worry about it since regardless of his class, he is sure Noel will grow up to become the world's strongest seeker because he could sense incredible talent within him. Ever since that day, Noel hasn't been discouraged by his support class and remains determined to become the world's strongest seeker, even though he's just a talker. After their mission is complete, the party has to head back to Etria, the capital of the Velnet Empire, so they can report their success. The Empire is more susceptible to abyss attacks than other nations, so to fight this, the Empire developed magical technology using the materials they acquired from the demons. The material used to develop this technology can only be acquired with the help of Seekers, so Seekers are admired by the public for their contributions to society. Noel officially became a Seeker when he was 15, so he moved to the capital and found himself some companions since he couldn't fight alone as a Seeker. Walter over here is the warrior of the party, Tanya is the healer, and Loy is the swordsman. So although Noel would love to have a scout as well, all in all, their team is pretty balanced. Walter notices that Noel is being really quiet for some reason, so he asks if something is wrong. The party got a reward of 5 million Phil for completing the quest, so Walter asks if Noel is upset that they didn't negotiate for more money. He then tells Noel that a seeker shouldn't get so hung up on money, and that his grandpa probably would have said the same thing, but on the contrary, the first lesson Grandpa taught Noel was that no matter what he does, he better be getting paid top dollar because he can't be risking his life just to go home broke at the end of the day. With that being said, Noel definitely wanted a higher reward, and he couldn't care less about what Walter thinks, but he will let it go just this once. Tanya tells Walter to quit bothering Noel, but he still insists that Noel should show him more respect since he is 2 years older than him. Noel retorts that age means nothing among Seekers, as the only thing that will earn you respect is your strength, and Noel is starting to question if Walter is really competent enough to be respected. Walter blows up and yells that Noel is the only one here who is incompetent because all he ever does is give orders from the back while the rest of them risk their lives on the front line. Noel thought he had a good dynamic with the team, but now he realizes that they all see him as a burden despite all the things he does for them. But before addressing that, he insults Walter one more time and is about to start a fight with him. However, Lloyd steps in and separates the two of them before anything bad happens. He then changes the subject and suggests that they call it a day and start splitting up their rewards. A little while later, they are all sitting by the fountain and Tanya is disappointed with how little she ended up getting after such a difficult mission. Lloyd explains that after all the equipment costs and taxes they had to pay, there was only 1 million Phil left, so each team member only gets 250,000. He agrees that it's frustrating, but their party's funds are steadily increasing, so he's sure they'll make more money the next time they get a big mission like this. Noel points out that there isn't going to be a next time because they almost never get big missions because clans get all the high-profile abysses, and even when they do get the missions, they will be forced to pay a penalty fee if they fail to clear it on their own, so it's not sustainable. That aside, Noel asks Lloyd how much money their party has in its joint funds account. Lloyd tells him they have 12.8 million saved up, so Noel suggests that the team should invest that money in forming their own clan. Everyone is shocked that he would suggest such a thing, and Lloyd tries explaining all the reasons why they can't do that, mainly because they would be required to pay 20 million to the country in order to set one up, and they don't have that much money. However, Noel isn't deterred and says he is willing to use 7.2 million of his personal money to make up the difference. He knows it's an expensive decision, but he assures everyone that in the long run, they'll gain much more money since they won't be limited to the leftover quests anymore. Lloyd then points out that they would need to acquire a base of operations within the capital, and rent prices are outrageous nowadays. However, Noel's already got that covered and found a cheap building for their team to rent. Tanya then chimes in and mentions that they are all still C-rank newbies, so they couldn't possibly handle running a clan, but Noel doesn't think that's a good excuse to avoid forming a clan. If they don't take the leap now, then they'll never be ready to run a clan on their own. Noel has been studying all about how to run a clan, so he knows all about the necessary procedures that need to be taken. The only thing he doesn't have is experience, and the only way to get clan experience is to start a clan. So while it may be difficult, there's no other way. Noel makes a good point, but even so, Lloyd still believes they won't be given any good jobs since they have proven themselves to be trustworthy. But that's where Lloyd is wrong. Noel can guarantee that they will be given a bunch of good jobs, and it has nothing to do with them being trustworthy. They are going to get jobs because they are hot. This country wants more seekers, and a great seeker is considered both a hero and an idol. So the country will naturally treat them better because they are good looking. Tanya doesn't think it's a good idea since they would practically be selling themselves, but Walter is already sold on the idea because he has been getting sick of the mediocre life they've been living. He wants to experience fame and wealth, and there's nothing Tanya can say that will talk him out of it. Walter and Noel are in agreement on this, so Noel asks Lloyd what his opinion is as the leader of the party. If Lloyd wants to say no, then Noel is prepared to quit the party and take his share of the savings so he can form a clan with someone else because he has a dream to become the strongest seeker, and he won't let anything get in his way. Lloyd gets a dark look in his eyes as he is left with no choice but to accept Noel's demands. However, he suggests they discuss the details of this clan formation the day after tomorrow. Walter is fine with that, and Noel is glad he was able to get Tanya and Lloyd on board with his idea, so he leaves to rest for the night. However, later that day, Walter comes running to Noel with terrible news as he has just discovered that Lloyd and Tanya have betrayed them and disappeared with all the money. After Noel reads the letter, he confirms what happened. Lloyd invested all his money in NFTs a couple years back, and now he is in a deep pile of debt. So he embezzled the party's money to pay off his debt and fled the capital before he could be found out. Noel finds this whole thing insanely funny since Lloyd always upheld the act of a noble and chivalrous person. But getting down to business, Noel asks Walter when and where he found this letter. Walter explains that he heard about a really good job last night, so he headed to Lloyd's room first thing in the morning to tell him about it. But by the time he arrived, Lloyd had already cleaned out his room, and that's when the innkeeper showed him the letter. According to the innkeeper, Lloyd and Tanya left the inn around 8 p.m. last night, just before the city gates closed, and under normal circumstances, neither Noel nor Walter would have found out about this until the following afternoon, so Lloyd was trying to buy as much time as possible before the escape. It's 9:30 in the morning now, so while they may have found out sooner than Lloyd expected, it has still been over half a day, so he and Tanya must have covered a considerable distance by now. However, the gates must have records of which direction they were headed in, and they most likely left on foot, so Noel and Walter should be able to catch up if they take a horse. Walter is eager to get going, but Noel reminds him that this isn't as simple as chasing after them and getting the money back. Those two chose to abandon their party, and that's a definite betrayal, so worst case, if they catch up and confront them, it'll become a battle to the death. And even if they do beat Lloyd and Tanya, it would be a waste of time because Lloyd already spent all their money, but that doesn't mean Noel is going to let them get away without suffering for what they did. After getting dressed, Noel takes Walter down to the local tavern, but Walter doesn't understand why they are here. Noel doesn't want to waste time explaining the plan to Walter since he's too dumb to understand it anyway, so he just tells him to follow his lead. Noel heads inside and immediately gets the attention of everyone in the tavern. He tells them that 2 members of his party have stolen his party's money and escaped the capital, so he's willing to pay 2 million fils to anyone who can bring them back alive. Walter starts freaking out and asks Noel why he went and announced their predicament to the entire tavern, but Noel says there's a particular person he's looking for, so he just did this to save time. The first party to accept Noel's mission is the Lightning Bite party, so Noel gives the leader all the information he has about Lloyd and Tanya's escape, and soon after, several more parties decide to take the job, but Noel still hasn't found the person he was looking for. All of a sudden, a shady-looking man approaches Noel about his job offer, and this guy looks like he knows something, which is what Noel was waiting for. They head outside to talk, and the man explains that he saw a couple leaving town yesterday, and they perfectly match the description Noel gave. He's sure he knows where they are headed. The only problem is that the man's party isn't strong enough to defeat Lloyd and Tanya on their own, so Noel offers to help, but he will only be paying the man 1 million in exchange. The man tries to argue for the 2 million, but Noel has already read him like a book, so he knows that the man is too broke to turn down the 1 million. Eventually, the man caves in and agrees to the terms, so Noel tells him to get his party ready and meet him at the south gate. He also tells Walter to wait for him there because Noel has something he needs to do first. A little while later, Noel is done with his preparations, so he meets everyone at the front gate, and Walter has something he has been meaning to talk to Noel about. He wants to know if Noel is going to be alright fighting Lloyd and Tanya, but Noel has no reservations about it. and you will gladly kill them with no mercy whatsoever. Walter can't believe Noel feels nothing after they were partners for so long, but from the day they met, Noel had already come up with contingency plans to take them down if they ever betrayed him. He even has a plan to take down Walter, so never actually trusted any of them to begin with, and Walter could stand be less trusting in the future. Later that day, in a remote village, Lloyd and Tanya are walking, and Lloyd assures her that they should be safe for now, so they can rest easy tonight. He is sure that there is no way Noel would be petty enough to come after them even though the money has already been spent, but Lloyd gravely underestimated how petty Noel really is because he appears behind them, along with a full squad of people to capture them. Lloyd is about to draw his sword to fight, but Noel uses his ability to tell him not to move, and both he and Tanya are stunned in place. Now that Lloyd has nowhere left to run, Walter begins yelling at him for his betrayal. However, before he can punch Lloyd's face in, Noel says there's something he wants to ask. He knows that Lloyd already spent all the party's savings, but the money they got paid for the vampire hunt must still be in his possession, right? Lloyd denies having the money and says he used that as well, so Noel asks if he spent it on another failed NFT business, but Lloyd admits that he used the money to pay back his debts. The way Lloyd answers gives Noel all the information he needs, so he now realizes that Lloyd is a serial gambler. He must have gambled so much that he ended up in trouble with some debt collectors, but Noel wants to hear it from Lloyd's mouth. Lloyd is about to apologize again, but Walter cuts him off and yells at him for gambling away all the money they worked hard to save. Lloyd gives up on the innocent act and tells back that he is the real victim here. He didn't want to touch the party's money, but gambling was so much fun, and besides, it was their own fault for dumping the responsibility of leading on his shoulders. At this point, Noel has heard enough BS, so he kicks Lloyd in the face and starts stomping on him for thinking he could get away with such half-assed blame shifting. He was the one who said he wanted to become the leader, all just so he could find his gambling addiction. Before long, Lloyd has been beaten bloody, and he is begging for forgiveness, but Noel has never heard of such a word, so he will gladly be at Lloyd 1,000 times until he is satisfied. Tanya speaks up and begs Noel to spare Lloyd, and Noel says fine, but only if she is willing to take the beating in his place. Noel is a proud believer of gender equality, so he has no problem curb stomping her if that's what she really wants. He uses his power and tells her to confess her involvement, and once she is compelled to tell the truth, she admits that she gambled the party's money with Lloyd, and in fact, she's even more of a gambling addict than Lloyd is. The move Noel just used forces the target to reveal the absolute truth no matter what for a short amount of time. And once Tanya regains her senses, she yells at Noel for daring to use mind control on her because it is against Imperial law. Noel agrees and says she is right about it being illegal to use mind control for personal reasons, but right now she is the criminal here, so Noel's use of mind control is considered interrogation and is perfectly legal. Now that Noel is done talking to the traitors, the man asks Noel for his payment, and Noel agrees to pay him, but he just needs a minute first. The man doesn't like being told to wait, so he grabs Noel and accuses him of trying to scam them out of the money, but Noel drags the man to the floor and assures him that he will be paid for his work, so he should just be quiet and wait. The man is pissed, so he draws his knife and is about to attack Noel, but threatening Noel was the worst mistake he could have made because Noel immediately knocks him unconscious with a punch to the chest. Noel had learnt this technique from his grandpa by experiencing it firsthand. It is a strong blow directly to the area above the heart and can temporarily paralyze the heart muscles, causing even the most experienced seekers to faint if done properly. Noel's grandpa wanted him to learn this technique because as a talker, he can't buff himself, so this would at least give him some offensive ability. The man's teammates drag his unconscious body out of the road, and soon enough, a friend of Noel's pulls up in a fancy carriage. The man is an infamous slave trader, Finocchio Barzini, and he seems to be on good terms with Noel. He is the leader of the Barzini family, and Noel knows him to be quite eccentric and zesty, but he's the only one that can help him out, so he had to contact him. If it wasn't obvious yet, Noel intends to sell Lloyd and Tanya to Finocchio as slaves in order to make back the money they stole from him. Tanya protests, but Noel reminds her that he could always just turn her into the police, and jail time here means she will be sent down to the mines. And let me tell you, the mines are not fun. They'd have a much higher chance of surviving if they become slaves and hopefully get bought by a kind master. With that said, Noel asks Finocchio to begin evaluating the two for sale, but when he's done, Finocchio only offers to buy them for $6 million. Noel says that isn't enough, and Finocchio apologizes, but this is a bad time for him, so he can't offer any more than this. The Holy Cross Church is about to decree that everyone must take a vow of poverty, so if Finocchio offered top dollar for the Lloyd and Tanya, it would draw too much attention, and he would like to avoid that. Noel didn't realize the church held so much influence over a family as powerful as the Benazzi family, but it doesn't matter. He says he will accept 11 million as payment, and it takes a while for Finocchio to realize, but when he does, he starts yelling about Noel trying to get an extra 5 million. Because of the constant yelling, Noel keeps increasing the price until he is eventually asking for 15 million when Finocchio initially only offers 6. Finocchio was starting to get really pissed off, but Noel tells him that if he buys the two for 15 million, he will tell everyone that Finocchio only paid 13 million instead. The church's decree just means Finocchio can't buy things that are overpriced, but if he claims that Lloyd and Tanya are genuinely worth the money, people will be lining up to buy them solely because they are expensive. If Finocchio plays his cards right, he might even be able to sell them for as high 90 million. Finocchio is insanely impressed by how cunning Noel is, so he offers him a leadership position in his family, but Noel turns him down. Finocchio understands and he is on board with the deal, but before he finalizes things, he hoes over to the scruffy guy and his party to warn them not to say a word about any of this unless they want to die painful deaths. With that said, he hands Noel a down payment for the two slaves and begins taking them away. Tanya pleads with Noel not to do this, but again, forgiveness doesn't exist in his dictionary, so she turns to Walter and asks him to do something about it. She knows Walter has a crush on her, so she expects him to save her, but Walter refuses, so she starts laying into him with every insult she can come up with, and the look on Walter's face is priceless because he never could have imagined she would say such things to him. Now that the deal is done, Noel gives the man his 1 million payment and turns to leave with Walter. After this incident, Walter was left questioning his life choices and he is seriously considering quitting the whole seeker job, but Noel tells him this wasn't his fault. In this profession, you're going to meet a lot of people, and many of them will be backstabbers. Walter may not be mentally tough and may be slightly dumb, but Noel believes he's a gifted warrior, so he wants to continue to fight by his side and rebuild their party together. However, Walter can't bring himself to accept and refuses to live the life of a seeker after what just happened. Noel understood and accepted Walter's wishes, so as Walter was leaving the city, Noel wished him good luck with his future endeavors and bid him farewell. But as for him, he hasn't given up on his dream yet. He is disappointed that his party ended up being dissolved, but he refuses to let this stop him from becoming the strongest, so he intends to rebuild the Blue Beyond party and make it stronger than ever before. Noel puts out a post looking for new party members, but while he's waiting for people to show up, Wolf keeps pestering him. He tells Noel that no one is going to show up because all the people who are skilled enough to meet Noel's requirements would already be in a party, and he's not wrong, but Noel tells him to mind his own business. Wolf keeps talking though and tells Noel that he would love to have him join Lightning Bite. Noel thinks about it for a second, and Lightning Bite certainly is a good choice for a party with all its skilled members, with Wolf the swordsman and Lisha the archer, as well as other strong members. Overall, it's not a terrible proposition, and Wolf reminds Noel that he would be able to make a lot of money if he joined his party, but Lisha and the others in Lightning Bite tell him that he shouldn't be so pushy about things like this. Surprisingly, Noel tells Wolf that he will agree to join Lightning Bite, but only under the condition that he becomes the new leader of the party. The other party members don't seem to mind if Noel becomes their new leader, and Wolf can't believe they all agreed to it so easily. But it seems like an easy choice to them since Noel is definitely a lot smarter than Wolf. Wolf admits Noel may be smarter than him, but he is still the one who founded Lightning Bite, so he isn't going to give it up to Noel anytime soon. Just then, a girl appears behind everyone, and they are all startled because none of them could sense her coming, not even Lisha, and she's got elf ears. The mysterious girl introduces herself as Alma and says she's here to apply to join Noel's party, so Noel sits down with her and begins the interview. First things first, he asks her if she's a minor because he doesn't want to get in any legal trouble with the Empire, but luckily Alma is 21 years old, so she's old enough to become a seeker. After that, the members of Lightning Bite begin asking all sorts of personal questions, like her hobbies and favorite books, but what Noel really wants to know is her job and rank. Alma answers and says she's a C-rank scout, and Noel thinks this is a stroke of luck because he has been looking for a good scout for a while now. But before he accepts her, he has one more question and asks why she wants to become a seeker. Alma informs him that she isn't actually interested in becoming a seeker. She's just here because she wanted to see Noel, the grandson of Overdieth. Noel is surprised that Alma knows about his grandpa, but she clarifies that she has never personally met Overdieth. But her grandpa once fought Noel's grandpa several years ago, and it cost him his red arm. Noel was put on edge because he thinks Alma is here to get revenge for her grandpa, but Alma denies it because she isn't into generational grudges. She just wanted to find out what the grandson of a legendary hero like Overdieth would be like. Her grandpa is dead anyway, so it's not like it matters if she gets revenge or not. Noel is curious, so he asks who her grandpa was, and Alma answers that his name was Alcor Udicar. The entire bar goes silent at the mention of that name because Alcor is famous for being the head of the Society of Assassins. He would kill any target at a client's request as long as he was sufficiently compensated, so he was known as the strongest assassin. One of the bar regulars gets offended that Alma would claim to be related to a man as legendary as Alcor, and he doesn't believe a word of what she said, so he calls her out. Wolf tells Logan to back down, but he's already fired up, so he tells Alma that there's an unspoken rule among Seekers, so you have to go to the right bar for your rank, otherwise you'll get beaten up by the bar regulars. Alma has never heard of such a rule, probably because Logan is the only one who follows it since he loves getting the chance to beat people up, but she interrupts Logan's rant and says she has a question to ask Noel. She wants to know what determines a Seeker's rank, so Noel tells her your rank is usually determined by the kind of jobs you take or by the skill you display. Alma understands now, so if she wants to prove that she is strong enough to be here, all she has to do is take Logan down. Logan is enraged that she thinks she can beat him, so he tries to punch her, but she vanishes right before his eyes, and in a matter of seconds, Logan gets knocked the F out. After what he just saw, Noel jumps up and hires Alma immediately, but Alma is now hungry from all the energy she wasted beating Logan up, so Noel takes her out and buys her a snack. Alma is astounded by how tasty the bun is, and Noel finds this strange since she shouldn't be so excited over regular buns, but she never got to eat anything as good as this while living up in the mountains. Hearing that she has spent all of her life in the mountains, Noel finds it a little easier to believe that she is really the granddaughter of Alcor. Alma is a little upset that Noel didn't believe her till now, but she still believed him when he said he was Overdick's grandson. Her grandpa had warned her never to fight over death under any circumstances, because the man wouldn't hesitate to cheat in any manner necessary to win, and when she looks at Noel, his eyes made her feel like he would do the same thing. Noel asks if she spent her time in the mountains training to become an assassin, and Alma confirms it. She has to rank up from a scout to an assassin, and while she hasn't ranked up yet, she meets the requirements to be classified as a B-rank scout. If that's the case, Noel asks why she hasn't already joined the Assassin Society since she is more than qualified, and Alma had intended to do just that, but when she was taking the entrance exam, there was a bit of an incident. She was asked to fight one of their assassins, but she was disappointed because her opponent wasn't as strong as she was hoping he would be. The guy was offended that she called him weak, so as the match started, he went at her with full force. But after all his big talk, he missed every single punch he threw and ended up on the ground. Alma then held a knife to his head, so the guy began pleading for his life since this was just an exam and killing isn't allowed. Those may be the rules, but Alma simply doesn't care because her grandpa taught her that only the strong can survive, so all weaklings must die. Just before she stabs the guy, her blade gets caught and she's forced to back away because Simon, the new head of the Assassin Society, refused to let her just kill one of his people. After that, Alma was rejected from the Assassin Society for obvious reasons. The society approved of her skills, but they just couldn't allow her to join because of her murderous tendencies as they don't want to deal with her. Apparently, the Assassin Society is in the process of officially being recognized as an organization by the royal family, so they will be focusing mainly on spy work instead of assassinations, and they need to keep a clean record to do that. It takes a second for Noel to realize that Alma just shared a national secret with him, so he is worried the society might send assassins to shut him up because of it. However, Noel thinks it's fine since she can probably protect him if it comes to that, although that doesn't make him feel any better. There's nothing he can do about it now, so the next day, Noel and Alma head out into the forest to do some teamwork training. Noel asks Alma if she knows anything about talkers like him, but she hasn't really studied the topic, so all she knows is that they have weak combat skills, but possess strong support skills instead. Noel tells her she's correct, but a talker's capabilities are a lot more complicated than that. For instance, Noel can use the assault command to make his teammates strong enough to end a fight in one shot, but if he uses it at the wrong time, it could result in his entire party getting wiped out. That's why he needs to be aware of all the things that go on during the battle and use his skills accordingly to bring about the best outcome. However, there's a drawback since as a talker, he can't use buffs on himself, so he isn't meant to be able to fight. Of course, that hasn't stopped him so far. To begin her training, Noel tells Alma that he wants her to capture a monster in these woods, and although it's not as dangerous as the ones in the Abyss, it is still a big enough threat that it needs to be eliminated. He tells her he is talking about the killer rabbits, and Alma thinks they are really cute, but Noel reminds her that these things are still dangerous. He wants her to catch a killer rabbit with one of his buffs active on her, and Alma thinks this should be easy, but she says she doesn't need Noel's help to do it. It may be true that Alma is perfectly capable of doing this on her own, but that's not why he wants her to use one of his buffs. She may think a buff will only make her stronger, but it takes a lot of training to be able to use it effectively. For example, Alma has a skill called Excel that doubles her speed, and it's stacked so she can use it consecutively up to 5 times. However, she couldn't use it at full power from the start because the increased speed would have broken her bones and torn her muscles. And that's just with her own skill, so imagine what would happen if she had a buff from Noel on top of that. She needs to train her body to be able to adapt to the strain of Noel's buff, so they are out here to test how well she can handle it. Noel's former party were talented, and even they took 6 months before they could effectively utilize his buffs, so Alma's performance will determine whether they continue as a team or not. Alma ensures him that she can handle whatever he has planned, so Noel asks her if she can sense any killer rabbits nearby, and there are rabbits in the area right now, so Noel activates his tactician skill and tells her to use her Axel skill at max capacity. As long as she follows his orders, her ability will have a stronger effect, and to pass his test, all she needs to do is capture one of the bunnies and bring it back to him within 10 seconds. Alma activates her acceleration skill, and in the blink of an eye, she's already halfway across the forest catching rabbits. She is amazed by how much faster she is than normal, so before the 10 seconds are up, she returns to Noel with all 13 rabbits. Noel is surprised she managed to catch them all, and not only was she able to utilize the buffs easily, but she did it all in the span of 8 seconds too. From what he has seen, Noel is sure she doesn't need any further training, so he suggests that they take their first job as a party, and he's already got the perfect one in mind. He received a letter from a former client a while ago, and it says there have been a bunch of thieves attacking the village of Mintz, so Noel and Alma are going to go take care of it. They will be traveling by stagecoach, and Alma thinks it's really fun because she has never ridden one before, but it's going to be a long and boring ride. So Noel says he will tell her about the work a Seeker can take on. Seekers aren't limited to quests in the Abyss, they are also able to hunt monsters, criminals, treasure, and even mystic land. The gang of thieves they are on their way to deal with wouldn't usually be a problem for the local lord to handle, but with all the bureaucracy, the village would have been destroyed by the time any official help arrives. That's why he was hired to help, although since the village is pretty poor, Noel isn't expecting to receive much of a reward, but it'll be a good chance to see how Alma does in actual combat. After a long coach ride, they arrive in the town of Eudora, and Alma's butt is stiff as a board from all the sitting, so she never wants to have to sit in one of those again. For now, Noel suggests they find an inn to stay at for the night, but everywhere they go, all the rooms are booked, so they eventually get stuck sharing a single room because it's all that's available. Noel tells Alma that he will sleep on the floor so she can have the bed if she wants, but Alma doesn't see why they can't just share the bed together, and she finds it really cute that Noel gets embarrassed about things like this. Noel doesn't want to talk about this anymore, so he walks away to go take a bath. To pass the time, Alma began doing some stretches, but as soon as Noel exits the bath, she stands straight up and begins admiring his perfectly formed muscles. She thinks he has an amazing physique, but it's a shame that he's just a talker because if he was a warrior like Overdieth, he could have become the ultimate seeker. No matter how much hard work he puts in, he will never be able to outclass those with natural talent, and Alma is disappointed because she would have loved to see what heights he could reach. Noel doesn't let her comments get to him and flicks her on the forehead for saying unnecessary things, but while Alma is taking her bath, he begins reflecting on the things she said because he knows she is right. He wanted to be a warrior like his grandpa more than anything, but life didn't give him what he wanted, so he has to deal with the class he got. Once they finally arrive in the village, the chief comes out to greet the party, but he is a little surprised to see that there are only 2 of them. Noel explains that his other party members had to quit the party for various reasons, leaving out the part about him selling them off. Anyway, the Blue Beyond party now consists of Noel and Alma alone. Noel assures the chief that the 2 of them are more than capable of handling some thieves. They'd all sit down to have a meeting in the chief's living room, and Noel notices the chief's daughter staring at him from behind a curtain, so he says hi to her, but the girl immediately hides from him. The chief apologizes to Noel for his daughter's rude behavior and explains that she was actually really looking forward to seeing him, but Noel just wants to talk about the details of the mission chief has for him. According to the letter Noel received, there is a band of around 20 thieves in the area, and they've already attacked one of the neighboring villages, so this village might be their next target. He asks if there are any clues as to the location of the thieves' base, and the chief has actually managed to scout it out. The thieves are in the rocky clearing in the eastern part of the forest, and with the info provided, Noel shouldn't have any trouble locating them, but before he goes, he wants to discuss compensation. The chief's letter offered $200,000 up front and $300,000 once he completes the job, but before Noel is even done speaking, the chief's wife brings out the upfront $200,000, and the chief promises to pay the rest upon completion of the quest. Noel is pretty surprised since he was fully expecting them to start bargaining on the price, and from the coins in the bag, it looks like the chief just barely managed to scrape this money together, so he must be really desperate. Since he's got the upfront payment, Noel and Alma head out to complete the mission, but as they are walking there, Alma tells Noel that the chief was staring at her cleavage the entire time they were talking, and he was doing it right in front of his wife and daughter too, so she thinks very little of him. Just then, the village chief's daughter comes running up behind them, and she wants to talk to Noel since she was too nervous to do it back at the house. She shows him her toy, and Noel recognizes it as the one he gave her the last time he was in this village. The girl has had it ever since and has treasured it more than anything because she really likes Noel. She doesn't have much else to say, but she promises to cook something delicious for him once he gets back from the mission, and Noel says he is looking forward to it. Alma found the whole interaction to be really funny, since Noel actually seems to have a sweet side, but he doesn't want to hear it from her. Later that night, they finally make it to Thieves' Camp, and Noel has no idea why the chief thought there were only 20, because the number of thieves here is well over 40. He quickly identifies the leader of the group, and the guy looks awfully familiar, so Noel soon realizes that it's none other than Gordo the Razor Blade. The dude has a 2 million Phil bounty on his head, but he's a B-rank scout, so he asks Alma if she's confident she would be able to beat him. Alma is sure she could win if it was a proper one-on-one, but not so much if she has to deal with all of Gordo's henchmen at the same time. Noel expected that answer, so he says he has a plan to handle all the henchmen. Alma is surprised Noel intends on fighting with her because if he gets any closer than he already is, the bandits will be able to detect him, although Alma can get as close as she wants because she has a stealth skill. Noel tells her to stop talking and to just focus on following his instructions, so she does as she is told and jumps into the camp with her stealth skill active. Noel and Alma are able to maintain communication because one of Noel's skills, Link, which allows him to share his thoughts with his teammates. Before long, Alma makes it to Gordo's tent and informs Noel that she's within striking distance, so Noel uses Stun Howl on the entire camp, causing all the henchmen to freeze up temporarily. The second everyone is stunned, Noel orders Alma to kill Gordo, so with her quintuple acceleration, she charges into the tent and immediately stabs him through the heart. Now that Gordo is dead, all that's left is to take care of the remaining bandits, so Noel orders Alma to keep them busy until he can get down there, and she begins slaughtering the soldiers in her immediate vicinity. As Noel descends the hill, he notices that Alma seems to be enjoying this a little too much, and her murderous tendencies might become a problem for him someday, but that day is not today, so he joins her in combat and uses his fire bullet to burn the rest of the thieves to a crisp. Once the mission is complete, the two of them head back to the village and are greeted by the village chief, who says he is glad they are alive. He asks about the situation with the thieves, and Noel informs him that they have all been dealt with, offering their leader's head as proof, but the village chief says he doesn't need to see the severed head. Since he has completed the mission, Noel asks for the rest of his payment, and the chief says he will give it to him, but first he invites him to have dinner with them since his daughter, Chelsea, has been looking forward to it. As Noel and Alma sit down with the family, the chief tells Noel about how Chelsea was recently evaluated as a swordsman, so Chelsea asks Noel if she thinks she can become a seeker like him. Noel tells her that anyone can become a seeker, although there is usually a training camp where you have to go to learn the ropes, but alternatively, Chelsea could work as a supporter for an established seeker and gain experience that way. But, as he is saying this, the chief and his wife have a look on their face that says they are up to no good. A little while later, Chelsea asks Noel if he will allow her to join his party if she becomes a powerful seeker in the future, and Noel says if she becomes powerful in the future and still looks up to him, he will be more than happy to accept her into his party, and Chelsea is really excited to hear that. Just then, the chief and his wife come back to the living room with a bottle of wine, and he says he wants to celebrate, so he pours a glass of his very expensive bottle of wine for both Noel and Alma. However, after inspecting the wine a little, Noel says he couldn't possibly take the first sip of such high-quality wine, so he insists that the chief take the first sip. The chief starts panicking and tries to make up an excuse for why he can't drink it, but Noel still insists that he sip the wine first because he knows that the chief poisoned it. The chief tries to deny poisoning the wine, but Noel has a lot of reasons for his accusation. First, the chief clearly lied about there being only 20 thieves, so he wouldn't have to pay as much, and someone who would do that would never open such an expensive bottle of wine for guests. Secondly, the wine isn't even expensive. Noel can tell by the smell that it's the cheapest wine possible, and that it was opened a long time ago, and finally there has been a distinct bloodlust coming from the chief and his wife ever since they brought out that bottle of wine. Alma calls the man stupid for thinking they would fall for such an obvious murder attempt, plus the poison wouldn't have worked anyway since Alma is immune to all sorts of poisons. The chief gets angry and claims that they have no evidence, But if he is still denying that he poisoned the wine, then Noel says he should have no issues drinking it. The village chief throws a tantrum and yells for Noel to get out of his village immediately, but Noel just uses his confession skill on him and forces the chief to admit that he intended to poison them so he wouldn't have to pay Noel and then steal all their money and equipment. Chelsea can't believe her father was really trying to kill Noel, but now that Noel has heard the confession, he immediately jumps up and stabs the chief in the eye with his thumb. The chief yells out in pain, but Noel is nowhere near done because he's going to take out the chief's other eye, and after that his nose and then his tongue. The chief begs for forgiveness, but forgiveness is the last thing Noel would ever hand out, especially not to someone who tried to kill him. He tells the chief that if he wants to survive, then he's going to have to give Noel every last penny he has. The chief pleads with Noel not to take his money because he has debts to repay and the Gambino Mafia family will do terrible things to him if he misses a payment, and that's sad and all, but does Noel look like he gives a frick? He's about to go through with it, but at the last second, Chelsea brings out the bag with all the money they have in the house, which is around 800,000, and she tells Noel he can have it, so he should please let her father go. The chief yells at her because if they lose that money, the Gambino family might kill them. But if Chelsea doesn't give that money to Noel, then Noel will definitely kill the chief right now. Noel accepts the money, and after making sure there's enough, he tells Alma that they are leaving. But as he leaves, Chelsea curses Noel and all other seekers for what he has done, which stings a little since she looked up to him a few minutes ago, but it is what it is. As Noel and Alma are walking away, Alma asks Noel if he's okay with how things ended up, but he's got his money, and the chief was the one in the wrong, so he can live with being hated for his ruthlessness. A little while later, they see an airship pass overhead, and from the insignia on the bottom, Noel recognizes that it belongs to the Goat Clan, the 3-star regalia. Alma thinks it's cool, but she doesn't really know what regalia means, so Noel explains that it means the clan has been recognized by the Empire. There are currently 7 regalia stars, and not all of them are equal because there are various levels of strength between them. The last 4 are at the bottom, the 3rd and 2nd are relatively equal, but only the most powerful clan earns the 1-star regalia title. One of the benefits of being recognized as a regalia is that it comes with the rights to your own personal airship, and the seekers who manage to earn this title are top of the line in strength, intelligence, wealth, and experience. Noel has already made the decision that by this time next year, he will become strong enough to be recognized as a regalia. Seeing the determination in Noel's eyes, Alma thinks back to the day she was rejected by the Assassin Society. She asked Simon if she did well enough, and Simon told her that her combat prowess was indeed extraordinary, but that didn't mean she passed. He says he has a simple question for her, so he asks if Alma was the one who killed Alucor, the former Assassin Association leader, and she answers that she did it. Even though he was the god of assassins, he became a sitting duck in his insanity. Alcor was a truly terrifying man, yet he still could never defeat Overdeath, and that fact ate away at his mind until it drove him crazy. Alma is actually the daughter of Alcor and a random woman he kidnapped, and she wasn't the only one either. Alcor had many children, but he never wanted to raise a child. He wanted to raise an assassin that could become his successor. So he forced all his children to fight amongst themselves to the death until Alma was the only one left alive. Simone understands the situation that led Alma to become this way, but she simply isn't a good fit for the Assassin Society. Alma couldn't believe she was being rejected even though she passed the test, but Simone told her that physical strength wasn't the only criterion. That was 21 years of her life that were wasted, so what is she supposed to do now? Simone tells her she is free to live her life however she wants, but if she is looking for something to do, he informs her that the grandson of Overdeath is a seeker as well, and even though he is just a talker, he is still considerably strong. If she is intrigued, then she should head to Eltria if wants to meet him. That was exactly what Alma did, and right now she is really glad she did because she has found a new purpose in life and swears to fight by Noel's side forever. This was the end of episode 4. Subscribe to not miss the next part.